So hopefully everyone can see the screen. And just sort of setting the tone for the day, we are recording the session because we tend to go through fairly quickly, and it helps people to be able to have a video afterwards where they can go through and catch up if there's anything that they missed. You will also get a copy of the presentation after the session, along with an email that advises you of various helpful thoughts. Please do interrupt by all means if you have any questions as we run through. But if you put them on the chat or the Q&A, then I can send answers if we run out of time. So what we're going to talk about today is the licenses that make Parish Online work to the best advantage. I suspect you've all got these already, but we'll just mention them anyway. We're then going to go through a session of how it works, what it can do, what maps and layers there are available, how you use them to give the best picture to people. And then we're going to have fun actually doing it ourselves. There'll be a last sort of a very quick mention of the main menus and what they are, how to use them. And they do form the subject of another training session should anyone want to use that. And we also touch on the asset register, which is different from everything else in Parish Online. So let me press on. All of parish councils in the country and town councils are entitled to the very best that the Ordnance Survey has to offer in digital mapping. And the difference between using Parish Online without PSGA, which is what you see in the diagram on the right, and with it, which is there, is quite remarkable. The level of detail is considerable. Everybody gets the chance to use the full PSGA agreement, so we'll just touch on the aerial mapping as well, and then show you how to get hold of them if you don't already have them. So linked to your PSGA number is, again, a free access to the aerial photography of Great Britain. And again, you're able to go from the diagram on the right to one there with much more detail, much better definition. And if you don't have these in your system, and we will touch on how to get them, then I strongly recommend that you do. And in fact, since both of you are already up and running, I suspect you've already got them. So you can get your Parish Online or the PSGA number best by going up here to the top right to the cogwheel in Parish Online, clicking on it, going down to Help and Support, and you come up with the Support Center where you can just type in PSGA, which I've done here, and you get the session on how to get your PSGA number. And that's basically a matter of filling in a form. The form tells you it may take 5 days to get your number. It usually arrives within 15 minutes, so they lie. And the same is true for the aerial photography. All right, what can Parish Online do and how does it work? So it's based upon the digital mapping of the UK by the Ordnance Survey, which is the best sort of detail you can get. We get the high definition version of what they're up to. It's a browser access system, so you don't need to download any software, you don't need to install any software, and all the data that you see and create yourselves is safely held encrypted in the cloud. Creating information is a piece of cake. We're going to learn how to do it today, but there's also lots of places where you can go for help. So there's a sort of training that we're doing now. There's a user group. There's the knowledge base, which we just showed you briefly for the PSGA. There's a monthly newsletter, and you can always get help by emailing Parish Online themselves or me. So it is a simple system to use. And there are lots of tutorials online, which again, we'll show you how to get to those if you need them. And the help desk system within Parish Online is one of the best I've come across. So they're very quick to respond to you. In fact, I don't think I've ever had to wait for longer than an hour for an answer to a question. And there's also an online forum that you can use where if there's anybody online at the time with an answer to your question, they'll come up and give it to you. So why do we use maps in the first place? Well, I think that we're talking about what's called location-based data. So everything on a map has a point, has a place, and by clicking on any of the places, you can bring up the associated data record like the one on the left. So the whole system that we're going to be showing you is how you can add data to features, either features which are already there or features that you add yourself. And we're going to show you how you can vary what you see with the various layers within the mapping system. So these are all the standard reasons that people use Parish Online. Often the first trigger point for getting it in the first place is the need to come up with a neighborhood plan, and everyone realizes that you've got to have maps for neighborhood plans. But most people are now getting to use it for their everyday management. So when you want to show the grass mowing people where they're contracted to mow, it helps to give them an exact map diagram that you can let them take away and examine for themselves. Good stuff. It's also a way of getting data out of your filing cabinet where no one can get it because the parish clerk went off on holiday with the key in her pocket. Puts it onto a digital system that's available to everybody 24/7. It makes it very much faster and easier for generating reports and maps for people who need them. And in fact, the whole council can see everything that is in Parish Online. It's very quick and simple to use. So people can come up with their own thing. And we will be showing you how to do your own layers of information. And the ways of getting the information out of the system are many and varied, but printing is an easy one. You can produce a PDF, which you can then send to people or just keep as a record on your computer. The data that comes into Parish Online comes from all over the place. So lots of it comes from government sources. A lot of it comes from NGOs and things like that. So the National Allotment Society, is sort of a private enterprise, if you will, but the HM Land Industry and the Environment Agency and DEFRA are all obviously part of the government. ICCM is clearly an independent thing. And then down the bottom right, your local authorities can get very good at putting out information into Parish Online, and we will touch on that later. So, case studies. I love case studies. These are just examples of what various people around you have used the system for. So planning applications are a very typical one. Getting residential addresses out is fabulous, and we'll certainly show you how to do that. Then you can just show examples of what you can do. So here's just a boring old digital map of a local place, and then we start adding things to it. So here's the local sort of gap for the conservation area, if you will. That means that no one's going to be able to build there. Then you can say, on the other hand, we do want to put green spaces in. So here are several green spaces that the town plans to maintain. And then we can put in, say, industrial areas where we're going to build. And finally, you can say it's important to keep people's visual view of the skyline available, and these are views that you can want to keep open. All sorts of ways of just basically showing people in greater clarity what it is that you're talking about. In Chelsea, you can see they got, in this map here, they've got miles and miles of beaches and benches and paths and everything that they've got to maintain and keep up to a high standard for the tourists who come in the hundreds. So all these benches are individually plotted. They're individually tracked for maintenance and painting and surveys and so forth, which is really good from an insurance claim point of view. If you can demonstrate that you've got a system up and running for maintaining and preserving everything, then that's a great help in the times of trouble. Again, you can use the map to display data, so you can pull in photographs like we have here to show why you might or might not love your speed camera. Here's the information about it. Again, you just click on the item itself and up comes the data associated with it. It may be vitally important to you that your local authority keeps your salt bins filled in the winter. So it helps to make sure that they're aware of where the salt bins are and what their capacities are and how often they need reviewing or whatever. Lots of things you can do with local maps. Cemetery management was very topical during the pandemic. The government was suddenly petrified. It didn't have enough space to put what might be hundreds of thousands of bodies, but they were able to check with Parish Online and very soon discovered that there's actually lots of room in our cemeteries. But Parish Online was a very quick and easy way to provide that data. All the usual things that you want to take into account when considering planning applications. You can just bring in the layers, which we'll be discussing shortly, to show why what looks like a very safe and sensible planning application, actually there are all sorts of reasons why you might want to consider not approving it. And then there are ways of publishing the information. My favorite is actually what's called public maps, where anything that you put into Parish Online can be automatically updated to your local village website. You don't have to do anything beyond the initial setup. Every time you make a change within Parish Online, that change is reflected in the public version, which I think is fabulously useful. So that's one thing. Here's an example of where Netherstory has taken their map from Parish Online and put it into their tourist leaflet. And then all these case studies, this is one of the most valuable things, I think, within Parish Online. When people have done something, they then do a case study, which goes onto Parish Online's website. And under the case study tab, you can see that they're organized into all the sorts of things that people are doing. But clicking on any one of these boxes will show you the steps that the parish took to get the answers that you're looking at. So each one of these is a study of how to get the information into the system and then out of the system for everyone to see it. But it's a step-by-step guide in each case. So if you find something here that, that you want to do with your system, there will be a case study that you can go through to see how somebody else did it. And you've got sort of a roadmap on how to get to where you want to go. A really valuable thing, the case studies, I think. All right, how does this system work? Well, you may remember back in the old days of overhead projectors, where you put a transparent acetate onto the lighted platform. They threw it up onto the screen, and then you would take your felt tip pencil and make comments and adjustments, or you could put another layer of acetate on top of the first one and start showing diagrams and all sorts of things. And the global information system is doing exactly the same thing. It's producing all the basic information as the digital map, and then it gives you layers of data that you can throw in on top just to give you the picture that you're trying to talk to people about. So you can have any number of layers. You can put them all on at once, or you can put them on one at a time. There's obviously a danger of putting too much on. You just cloud everybody's vision, but it's very good of a beautiful way of demonstrating precisely what it is that you're trying to get across. The sources, as we mentioned earlier, come from all over, parts of the government, parts of the commercial world, parts of NGOs, all that sort of thing. And then you can see examples of the different layers here. So here's the parcels of land from the land registry. And there's a reference number here, which is fabulously useful for going back to the land registry website and saying, I want to know more information about this particular plot. And up they pop. And just for your mere £3 a time, you will get all the answers you're looking for. Data from DEFRA, really useful for planning floods and agricultural purposes. And so it goes all the way through. As you mentioned, you can turn the layers on and off. And there's usually a data record associated with each object on the map. So this is a picture of the addresses for listed buildings being turned on. And all these green dots have just popped up on your map, and then clicking on any dot will take you to the data entry for it. And in particularly helpful, there's a link to Historic England's website for that particular building. So within just a couple of clicks, you found out all you wanted to know about a particular grade 2 listed building, for instance, or any listed building in your area. We will be creating our own layers to show you A, how that can be helpful, and B, how simple it is. And that's a major purpose for Parish Online. And you're trying to get points across to people in the most comprehensive way available. So there are 3 types of layers within Parish Online that you can create. You have points, which are things like bus stops or grit bins. You can have lines, which are things like boundaries to fields or recreation grounds or footpaths. And you can have polygons, which essentially is everything else, any shape that you need to point out on the map. Now, each layer can only have one type of geometry. So you may find that you're putting in several layers to get a point across. Wrong use the word point, but you may have to show a grit bin, and then you want to show where in the village that appears, so or where the link is to the nearest footpath. Whatever it happens to be, you can put several layers in at once to get your data across. Various tips here for those of you who are stuck with iPads or trackpads. It's far better if you can get a mouse. It does make a big difference to you. And you want to get the best use of the real estate on your screen that you can. Stay well away from Internet Explorer. It's sort of gone, out of date, untouched, unwanted. But any of the others will work just fine. Let me show you some examples. So this is an opening page, as it happens for my particular parish in Somerset. What you get on the right-hand side of the screen, the big area, is the digital map of from the Ordnance Survey. On the left, that is a column at the moment of layers. This column on the left varies as you're going through, so it can change depending on what you're doing. At the moment, it's showing you the various layers, which are color coordinated. What you're actually seeing here is the top level of each layer. And then if you click on the small down arrow for any one of these layers, it pops up and comes up with many other. There are literally hundreds, right? I haven't counted, but I know there's more than 200 layers available of data in the system. At the moment, we don't have any layers turned on. We've got just the map. And the system always starts up with your own local parish. That's just the way it's designed, but you can go anywhere in the country. There is no limit to where you can travel and what you can do with the system. It's worth my mentioning that anything you put into the system is only visible by you or by people logging into your version of Parish Online. So even though you may want to draw a diagram around your grandmother's house in Northern Yorkshire, nobody in Northern Yorkshire can see that. And there's no limit to where you can go and do stuff, except when it comes time to producing public maps, the ones that we mentioned earlier that you might want to put on your local village website. They will only work within your own parish boundary and a couple of 100 meters either side of the boundary, just so that you can give people context. But that's about the only limitation that you have on the system. Those of you who've played around with Google Maps or the system will know that you can zoom in and out, you can scroll left and right, and we're going to do that now. I'm going to show you the scale of zooming that's available. The next few slides will be just involved with showing scale. So let's start off at the outmost layer. The Ordnance Survey map of the UK does cover the entire UK, so you can go anywhere, see anything. As I've now zoomed in sort of county level, and notice that you get a little scale down the bottom left here. So this particular length, that bar now represents 10 kilometers. And again, you're looking at the basic map of Somerset, if you will. I'm now going to zoom in to the next level down, and we're looking at sort of parish level. so that you can see the parish here. You're beginning to see individual houses. You're beginning to see names on roads and major features. But then you can start moving down towards the building level. So we're now, this length is now 100 meters. You can start looking at individual plots of land. I can go down still further to give you a much better idea of the scale of the house. We're now down to the 20-meter level. We're now down to the centimeter level. So this is one corner of the house that was in the previous picture. I keep forgetting to take out this block here. It doesn't represent, people keep asking me, what does that block represent? And I keep meaning to say it doesn't represent anything. It shouldn't be there. But basically, you can scale in, scale out to any or size you want to get the map that you wish to present. All right, talk about layers. On the left-hand side in the basic presentation are the layers of the base maps here, color-coded in green, and then the beige collection are all the other data layers that you get given. Now, the vast majority of these are provided by third parties, so it's their data. You cannot change it, but you can present it, you can read it, you can look at it. You can basically manipulate the data, but you cannot make any changes to anything other than your own parish layers, which we'll be creating later, and the asset register, which is the topic of a separate slide later on. So you can turn on any number of layers you like at any time, and you toggle on layers just by clicking anywhere within them. So for an example, I'm now going to click on that mini arrow up there, and it just shows you that we're down to 3 choices of Ordnance Survey maps, and the one we've taken is the standard. And every time you turn a layer on, you get a tick mark, and you'll notice that the parent layer has a circle around it. So any of these will have circles around them if you've selected a layer within them. At the moment, it's just only the one layer turned on. If I move to another map, now you can see we've turned off the standard map by clicking on it once to turn it off, and we've clicked down on the next one to turn it on. And that's known as toggling. So you toggle on, toggle off, best by clicking once on each of the layers. The grayscale is really useful when it comes to printing out. You can sort of get rid of all the extraneous color if the detail is important to you. If you don't have a laser printer, then this can be very helpful to save toner. But by and large, I think most people print in full color. There's even a white scale that gets you down into even less detail, but again, simpler for printing. On this one, we've now got 2 items toggled on at once. I've gone back to the standard premium stack for the Ordnance Surveys digital map here, but we've also turned on one of the layers of the aerial photography, and it looks rather a sort of a confused mixture. So you're beginning to see the outlines of the fields and so forth, but you've still got some of the mapping information here. But there's a way of changing that. So if I now go back up to this top right-hand layer and click on it, I get a little filter box. And the filter, this sort of transparency slider, you can slide it anywhere from 0 to 100% to show how much of the underlying map shows through. So in the next picture, I've gone down to 0. So you're getting 100% aerial photography now and no mapping information at all. If you went to 100% the other way, you get 0 photography and 100% of the mapping. And that 60% layer that we had before is just a sort of a combination of the two that's trying to be helpful. And you can move that around to whatever works best for you. A lot of people just like the aerial photography on its own. They don't even bother to turn on their premium stack. It's a matter of entirely up to you for choice. So what we're going to do now is toggle off the photo layer to go back to the regular map. And you'll see that I've put this slide in deliberately because every now and then Parish Online gets a bit confused when you've been turning or using photographs. And you'll get a white picture like that. And I put it in here just to show that the simple solution is just to click on the refresh icon up here. and the whole system starts back up again. So here we are, normal map restored. We're going to show you turning in some of the beige layers. And because there are hundreds of them, you want to do a search facility if you know what it is you're looking for. So I'm going to assume that we want to show something about floods or flooding. This particular area of Somerset is very prone to floods. It's called the Levels and spends a lot of its time underwater. So I'm just going to go up to the little magnifying glass here, click on it, and type in the word flood. And you'll see that the number of parent layers has dropped to 3. And when you click on, say, the Environment Agency, it will show you just those layers from them that have to do with flooding. So you take a look at this map here. This is just the normal everyday land around Long Sutton. And then we say, so what happens if there's a flood? We click on the zone 3 and bingo, you can see that half the county disappears underwater. And for those of you who wonder why milk is shipped from Somerset to London and not grown around London, it's because all the grass in London is thin and weedy, and in Somerset it's thick and lush and produces much nicer milk because we have so much water here. So you can turn off the search area or that layer just by clicking on the X. And we're just doing a quick summary. We showed you how to select maps, how to select photography, how to select various layers. Let's talk about putting them all together to make the picture clear to people. So as an example, we've taken our tree charter. So we got given 50 trees by the tree charter. And one of the requirements for being given them was to keep track of them and show what happens over the passage of time. So we planted them here in this red area. And if you click on the red area, which I'm going to do now, up pops the data layer here on the left-hand side. Not a great deal of data, just who owns the particular land where the stuff is put and when we planted it. But you'll notice that we've added 5 attachments here. And you can add any attachment of any sort to any record within Parish Online. So Word documents, photographs, spreadsheets, anything that's useful, inspection reports, PDF files, really useful for keeping track of what you're doing and giving you a clue as to the passage of time. So we're going to click on our plus sign here, and up come the photographs, or rather the attachments. And I'm just going to click on the green attachment here. And you see here is a photograph of what things look like when the trees first arrived. So they're all tiny little saplings, which are inside a protective tube, which is held in place by a stake. Just to prove that we are in an area of floods, here's flooding. I thought you want to see that. And what you can do is take a copy of anything, any time of calendar date, if you will, and just store it. This is what happens in 2020. This is how it looked in 21, 22, and so forth. And in 50 years' time, half of the trees would have perished. They don't all make it, but the others would have been transplanted. We would have tracked them in Parish Online, and you can go and look at any one of the surviving trees, see what it is, how it's doing, and how it's grown over the years. So that's really good for giving a comprehensive history, in this case of trees, but you can imagine doing that for all the stuff that you're responsible for maintaining and keeping in great shape. So park benches before and after being painted and maintained, being inspected for rot, the work that's been done by a maintainer, everything like that you've got as of now as a digital record, all stored very neatly where everyone can get hold of it when they want to in your Parish Online. So we're going to have a go for those of you who'd like to. We're going to create layers, and then we're going to put data in layers. So the way we do this is to introduce you to the concept of parish layers. So we mentioned also already that you cannot add data to third parties' information layers because it's their data, you can't change it. But there are times when you want to create your own layers. This is where you do it in the parish layer. So for those of you who are brand new to the system, there is likely to be a parish layer already in your system. But if there isn't, don't worry. It's a special case. In order to try and keep the sort of confusion level down, Parish Online automatically removes any layers that have no data in them. So if you don't find a layer called parish layer, it's a simple matter to go ahead and find it again. But give me a shout and we'll go through that. I think in your cases, both Salisbury and Sevenoaks will already have parish layers. So this is a nonsense piece of statement on my part. So to see what you've already got, you would click on the mini arrow here and just drop down to see what the layers are. But before you add a new layer, you need to think about just what it is you want to put there, why you're creating it, and therefore what data you may need to record. So we're going to go through this exercise just for today's purposes. So those of you who wish to join in, and there's no requirement to, but it's more fun, I think, you can have Parish Online up and running on your computer. You need to be a user or have access to an account with at least editor access. And you need to be able to switch from the Zoom screen, which is what you're on at the moment, where I'll be giving you instructions on what to do, to your Parish Online screen where you'll be actually doing it. So if anyone isn't familiar with leaping from one to the other, please do shout. We can go through that. It helps to have as few number of tabs open in your browser as possible, just because jumping between the various tabs is simpler if there are fewer tabs open. I'm assuming that you're going to be using a PC with a mouse. So let's go ahead and discuss what we're going to be doing. So we're going to say our layer that we're going to create needs a title, a name. It's going to have a geometry type. Remember, there are 3 geometry types: line, point, or polygon. You can choose whatever you like, but I'm going to use a polygon in my test. I've suggested that you give the title as your name and then test, just so that you can come back to it and delete it later if all goes wrong, or you can rename it later if it becomes fabulously useful. It's just what you wanted to do. There will be the opportunity to put in a description, choose your own, and we're going to need at least 1 column of data. For our purposes, we're going to create 3. We're going to create a name, a date, and a status column for each record. The name column will be typed text. The date column, amazingly, will be typed date. And then the status column, we're going to put in something called allowed values, just to show you basically what they are. This is basically how you create a drop-down list for people who are entering data to just select one of the values that you've put in. So the first thing that you do when entering data into the system is to make sure there's a layer, and we're going to add a new layer, which is in the Create menu up at the top here. So you click on Create and you click on New Layer. So if you guys are following through in Parish Online, now is the time to do this little bit. And then come back to the Zoom screen so you can see the next bit. When you create a new layer, up pops a little box that says, what do you want to call this? And I'm suggesting you put in just your name and test for today. Click on the next button. And it says, what geometry do you want to select? Again, you have a drop-down list of 3 choices there. Choose whichever one you want to do. I'm going with polygon. And then there's a space for adding 500 characters to describe your layer. This is quite important. When you created the name of the layer in the previous page, that's the name that will pop up in that left-hand column. So you're restricted in how much you can put there. But in 6 months' time or 2 years' time, or when someone new joins the council, they need to be able to understand why on earth you've created this layer. So this description here is where you put in the purpose of the layer and why you created it and what you want to do with it. You don't have to put in anything, it's optional, but this is where you put in something for you to come back to in the future to work out why on earth you created that layer. So when you're done, click on Next. And this is where you're going to add the columns of data. Now you remember that we've got none at the moment in here, and we said we create 3. We were going to create a name, we're going to create a date, and we're going to create a status. So to create the first column, you click on the plus sign at the top of the top right-hand corner of the box, and up will pop your first layer, which is automatically named name for you. It's automatically a text type, and it's all there. Now, we wanted a layer or a column called name, so just leave that exactly as it is. And the next one we're going to create, we will change the word name and put it to date, and we'll change the type to date. So now that you've got the first column ready, go back to the plus sign in the top right-hand corner and click for the next one. And it will also say it's called name, and it's also a text. And there will be a little red label that says you must have unique column names. So you need to change the name to whatever you like. In this case, we're going to change it to date. And all you do is put the mouse over the name, delete the name, and change it to date. Ditto for the type. You're going to go onto the little arrow and change it from text to date. And then we're done for that particular column. We've got one more to add, the status column. So go back up to the plus sign on the top right and add the third column. Again, you need to change the name to status. You can leave the text as it is, but we're now going to do something slightly different. We're going to add 3 allowed values. So instead of jumping onto the plus sign at the top right, you want to jump onto the add plus in the status layer, the bottom layer. Just click on add plus. And it will pop up with another box and says, what values do you want to add? And we're going to add 3. Again, you can call these whatever you like, but I suggest we have one called not yet started. So you just type not yet started in where it says add a value. And then you want to add another one. So you click on the add sign in the top right of the box, and you create a second value called under construction. And then you do it again, click on the add sign, create a third allowed value called finished. And then you're all done. You can click on confirm. And if you've done it correctly, you should come back with a screen that looks what's on my screen at the moment, which is just 3 rows saying they're all there. And I'm sorry, we clicked on confirm. So there we are. And you'll now see that the status layer has now got 3 items in the allowed values. Now we're complete. So we can click on the green finish button. If everything is not perfect by your wishes, it doesn't matter. Editing is very quick and very simple within Parish Online. It's very forgiving of errors. So you can always come back and change things later if they're not quite what you wanted. And in particular, what we usually find is that you've selected that you want 3 columns of data here. You may well find out as you go through later in life that you need 4 or 5. You just come back and add the extra 2. Piece of cake. So for today, we're clicking on the finish button, and the system will bring you back to your basic map, and it won't look as if anything has happened very much. But if you go into your parish layers, then your new test layer will be at the bottom of the list. So you may not see it immediately. You may have to scroll down, but there will be a new layer at the bottom. Parish Online always adds new layers to the bottom of the existing list of layers. So when you get to it, we're going to just click on it. Or actually, I tell a lie. We're going to say we want to make one of the columns that you've just created a required column. And what that means is that when somebody is adding a new feature to your map, they've got to fill in that required column. Otherwise, you get the problem where there are points on the map, but then the data added to them is 0. You have no idea what it's called, what it does, or anything else, because no one entered any data. So I'm saying make one of your columns required, and then you have to enter something in before you can create it. To make it required, we're going to click on the top right cogwheel, and a drop-down menu will appear, and you want to select administration. And then it's likely that the pop-up screen that comes up next will be empty in the middle column. You just need to wait a little bit and it will fill with all the list of layers that you've got. And again, depending on how many you've got, you may need to scroll down to the bottom to find your test. But once you found it, just click once on it to select it, please. And then we're going to, go up to the third column on the right at the top. You may need to scroll back up, but as long as you've selected your layer, you'll be fine. And you'll see there are two tabs, one called General and one called Column. And you need to click on the Column tab, where you'll see that there are 3 rows, one for each of your columns of data, name, date, and status. And the system's already filled in the search and the query boxes. You now just want to click in the required box for name. So in the first row, please just click or tick in the required box just by clicking once. And when you've done that, you should be seeing what I'm seeing on my screen, which is a required column is now being ticked for the name column. And up in the top right-hand corner, the yellow save icon will be highlighted. So we're ready to go. Just click on the save. And it will ask you, are you sure you want to save? And you say, yes, please. So you click on save again. And this is where you need to be a bit sharp. There will pop up a little green box that says layer saved, but it's only there for about 5 seconds and it will then disappear. If something's gone wrong and you get a red box saying not saved, the usual reason is because there may have been a blip in connectivity between you and the cloud. Remember that everything is happening up in the cloud. So that's the usual reason for there being a red box. But since no one's saying anything, I've assumed you've all got it saved. We now want to go back to the maps and see what we've done. So please click on the middle icon at the top right-hand corner. Looks like a globe and is called Back to Maps. And if you click on that, we'll go back to the main page. So on my system, I'm going to summarize where we are just so that you're familiar with it. So we've created a new layer called test. We've added the 3 columns that we wanted to the layer. We've allowed values on the status column. We've configured name to be required, and we've saved it, and we've come back to maps. And on your system, we're now back on the sort of initial screen, and we now want to add a record in your new layer. So the way to do that is to go down to your test layer in your parish layers and right click on it. Anywhere in the layer that says test, right click, and that will pop a mini menu. And what we're going to do now is add a feature. So by all means, just click on add feature. Now, when that happens, you will find that the left-hand column changes to a feature editor. You'll notice that the red name box is in red, so that it's a required feature, which is exactly what we wanted. And you'll notice that down the bottom of the screen, the save button is grayed out. And it will stay grayed out until all the requirements of the system to enter a new record have been met. Now, on the right-hand side where the map is, you'll notice that as you move your cursor around, it changes to a crosshairs, which means it wants you to state where this new feature is going to be. So depending on where you are on your map, you may wish to say, if we're going to build a new pavilion or something, which is what I'm going to do for this exercise, you need to be in a place where you're actually going to put the pavilion. So I would zoom in and scroll in till you find the place where you're going to put this new feature. In my case, I'm going to move to our recreation ground because that's where we're going to build this pavilion. So I'm just scrolling in now on my system until I've got to the recreation ground. So I've scrolled around until I found it, and then I've zoomed in until it's rather larger. So complete the boxes on the left-hand side. You need to put in something for name. So I put in test pavilion. We don't need a date necessarily. We don't need a status necessarily, but I would suggest we make the status not yet started because that's pretty accurate. And again, on my screen now, I'm moving on to the next screen, which just shows you the 3 columns on the left filled in. But you'll notice that the save button is still grayed out. because you filled in the required name, but we haven't actually put anything on the map yet. So now we're going to go and draw. In this case, if you chose polygon, and if you chose, like me, you're going to draw a pavilion, you can just start drawing a map. Oh, sorry, a feature. And the way to do that is to go for, let's say the top left corner with your mouse and click once, and then just drag the mouse. You can release the click, and then you'll find that a blue line follows you wherever you go with the mouse. When you want to turn a corner, like you get to the edge of the pavilion, click once more, and you'll find that you can now adjust direction and the mouse will follow. And basically, you just want to create a rectangle. When you've finished, double click to show that you have finished. And if you're looking at my Zoom, you'll see that I've done a pavilion, and it's outlined in blue. And I've now able to click on the save button because it's highlighted. It's all gone black because I did a double click at the end of the drawing. So by all means, please now click on save. And what happens then is you get the same little green pop-up saying I've saved successfully, and your location that you've drawn changes to a red color. And in the left column, the feature editor has gone to a blank record ready for the next entry, because the system assumes that you may be adding more than one feature at a time. In our case, we're not going to, so please just click on the X at the top of the feature editor, the left-hand column, and shut it down. So now you should be back on your main map. Your nice new pavilion is highlighted in red. On the left-hand side, you've got your columns, and your test column or layer should be highlighted. Have a click on it, sorry, a tick in it to show that you're using that one. So now let's say we haven't got the pavilion quite where we wanted it to be, or it's not in quite the right shape, or we've decided to change the name or the date or something. So we're going to show you how to edit the record. And first of all, we need to bring up the record. So you remember, this is location-based data. To bring up the record or anything, you click on the item itself. So click anywhere in your red pavilion, and you'll come up with a data record on the left-hand side. It may say your name entry, and test. Just click on that and up the record will pop. So in my case, I'm going to say, I'm not going to change the data at all, but I could do by editing it, and you edit by clicking on the pencil icon at the top left of the left column. We're going to show you how to move the building or to change its shape slightly, just to get you used to the idea of editing. So click on the pencil on the top left. And I suggest, if you're going to be changing the building, zoom in on it, make it much larger, because changes are much easier when you're dealing with bigger scales. So what I'm going to do for the exercise is just adjust the position of the pavilion so that it aligns itself with the edge, the boundary edge of the field that we're on. So on my edge, once you've clicked on the edit button and gone into the map, you'll see that the item that you're choosing has gone from being red to being a blue outline again, showing you that's the one that you're going to edit it. Now you can go to any point, anywhere in that outline, and putting your mouse over the top of it will bring you a blue dot, and you can then just move the blue dot, which will pull the line into a completely different shape. And just practice that now to just get the hang of adjusting the shape of the building. If you've done a straight, boring rectangular pavilion, then try adding a couple of corners to it, made it a bit more interesting. I've got an E shape on mine. Or you can move the boundary till it lines up and it'll snap into place. And just the whole point of this is just to get you used to changing things. Once you're happy with it, you can save. You'll find that when you've saved, the building has gone back to being red. And now we're going to just show you how to add an attachment. Now that you've made your edit to the system. The ability to add attachments has just arrived. It wasn't there before, but now you can add an attachment. And for today's exercise, let's just select anything you've got on your computer and add it there. So by all means, click on Add Attachment, the black bar, and now go off and find something on your computer to just add to it, and just add it. You'll notice it takes a little time, depending on how big the document or photo or whatever it is you've added. Again, you're uploading data to the cloud, so it may take a second or two, or it may take just a fraction of a second, depending on how big it is and how wide your broadband is. So whilst we're at this point, you'll notice this is the icons across the top of the feature editor in the left column. You've got a dustbin, which is your delete button. So you can get rid of this should you wish to later, but I suggest you leave it here for the moment just for reference purposes. But this is where you would delete a feature should you wish to. Okay, back to my page. If you can come back now to the Zoom and what I'm looking at, I've got a page up called the Asset Register. And this is really just an introduction to the Asset Register of why it's different from everything else in Parish Online. So the Asset Register is a mixture of a structure that's already being created for you, but one to which you can add data. So you can add data to any of your records in your own parish layers, but you can also add data to the Asset Register. So it comes with a built-in structure that you cannot change. The structure is the same for everybody all over the country. So it stays the same for everybody. You cannot change the structure, but the structure has been chosen to meet all the requirements for good governance and for insurance purposes. So you can add as many records as you wish to the Asset Register. And it's a great place for basically getting stuff off the spreadsheet or whatever you've got of asset registers at the moment and getting it into a digital system that you can come back to over and over again. So at this stage, I'm just introducing you to the Asset Register. We're not going into it. It's quite a complicated thing, and there is a whole training session available on it, should you wish it. But I do mention at this point that, again, what you add to your Asset Register or your parish layers is only visible by you or anybody with access to your account. So the stuff that you're putting in now to your Asset Register or your parish layers is private to your parish. All right. When we started the new layer, we went up to the Create menu. And you'll notice along the top of your Parish Online screen, there's a whole bunch of other menus. And the way to find out how they work is basically to go up to the knowledge base, which is the cogwheel on the top right of your main screen. So under the cogwheel, if you left click on it, you will get a drop-down list. The second one is called Help and Support. And you can go in there and type any of the menu headings to find out how to use them, what they do, how they work, that sort of thing. There's a wonderful new article called Add, Edit, and Create Layers or Features. And that explains most of the basics that you want. And there's also a Parish Online user group who've done an explanation of what each menu heading does. But that's a work in progress and needs updating because Parish Online has made some major changes recently and we're still catching up with them. But I just mentioned it here that the knowledge base is there for you to see how you do each individual step. Or of course, you can always come back to more training sessions. So we're now at the end of the training session. This is where I stop sharing the screen and come back so I can see you and ask if there are any questions that anyone needs to get resolved right now. Do feel free to ask if anything bugs you. Right. It's usually somebody, but there's today nobody.
I have one question.
Okay, Don.
You showed how to delete like polygons and points within a layer.
Yes.
How do you delete a layer itself if you made a complete mistake and you wanted to get rid of it?
Great question. Great question. And often people coming into Parish Online find that predecessors have created all sorts of nonsense that makes no sense at all. So easy to get rid of them. Go back up to that cogwheel on the top right side, click on administration and let all the layers arrive in the middle column. Select the one you want to get rid of and then move to the top of that column and you'll see there's a a waste paper bin, a dustbin, and you can just delete the layer in its entirety there. It's delightfully complete. Once it's gone, it's gone. But it does work.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else for anybody else?
Is there a way of transferring data from like a layer that someone else has made? So a predecessor, like you said. So they've done things like assets. They've done it on the parish layer instead of the asset register.
Yes.
Is there a way of transferring that over, or do I just have to manually?
That's a very interesting question. It's very frequently asked, and there is a facility at the moment for transferring the outline. So if it's a polygon, if it's a building or something like that, you can transfer that, but the data that goes with it, I'm afraid you can't. There are all sorts of reasons for that. There's lots of requests into Parish Online to change that, but so far they haven't got around to it. So the answer to your question is partially yes. You can copy any feature that's on the map, you can copy, but the data associated with it won't go.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Now I will be, as I said, emailing you all after the session with a copy of the video, with a copy of the presentation, and a list of useful links for you to get a hold of, such as how to find the community forum in the if you're looking for help online. We mentioned that there is a Friday afternoon feature every week between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock, what I call the usual suspects go online on Zoom, and they just sit there hoping that somebody will call in with questions. And they're all desperate to help. They're all parish councillors or parish clerks who are all very familiar with Parish Online, and they've just set themselves up as a banter group for anybody to come in with an ad hoc question, get the question answered, and then people just drop off again, or they can stay because they're enjoying the banter. It's sort of a light-hearted, friendly, cooperative system every Friday, and people drop in to ask all sorts of questions, really complicated ones or really simple ones. It doesn't matter. They're both readily accepted and answered. And finally, there is up in the knowledge base, the top right corner where you went up to help and support, there's also a tab called Community Forum. And that's where you can ask a question and anybody who's online will hopefully answer it for you. You can see examples of what people have already asked, but it's a brand new feature, so we're trying to build up more people using the system. But the idea is that you can get help straight away if there's anyone who happens to be logged in that's available to help you. Okay, if there are no other questions, I hope this has been helpful to you. Thank you very much for joining, and I do hope to see you again.
Thanks a lot, Graham.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming. Take care.
Thanks,
Thank
Graham.
you.
See you at 3.
Bye-bye.